Welcome back to What Did We Just Watch? The show where we talk about movies that are so bad,
so avant-garde,
and so mind-boggling, we have to ask ourselves, what did we just watch?
Today's episode is less shocking than some of our previous movies, but still very interesting to discuss, and that is 1960's Eyes Without a Face. So it was directed by, Georges Franju, who is probably best known for directing this, or his movie from 1963, Judex, which I think is an update of a silent serial, action serial. But he worked from the 1940s until the 1980s and worked in basically a bunch of different genres. I think his first movie was actually like a documentary short.
Oh.
So there are a bunch of writers on the movie. Oh man. Including Georges Franju himself, some guy named Jean Redon, Boileau Narquejac, which was a crime writing duo who wrote a bunch of novels together, 43 novels.
Damn!
Yeah.
That's cute.
And Claude Sautet, who was also, I think, the AD on this movie.
Oh.
Yeah, and he was a director in his own right. He actually started in, I think, 59. He directed his first movie, and he became really big in the 70s. He's probably best known for Caesar et Rosalie and The Things of Life, which The Things of Life I've seen, and it's really good. So the lead character is probably the doctor.
Yeah.
Yeah, and he is played by Pierre Brasseur, who was a really big French actor from what I can tell. He's in two of like the most famous French movies of like pre-60s, which is Children of Paradise and Port of Shadows. Port of Shadows is another really great movie, but I don't remember him at all in it. And he's also in this terrible 70s movie I watched a couple weeks ago called The Scoundrel. It's awful, but he's in it. So, and then we have Alida Valli, who was an Italian actress who is probably a lot better known to American audiences than everybody else in the movie because she had a career in America, including The Third Man. She's the lead, the lead female character in that. And she's also in a lesser-known Hitchcock movie called The Parodying Case, which is bad, but she's pretty good in it. And she's also in a couple of Italian classics, Senso and Suspiria. And then we have Edith Scobe, who plays the, I would say the heart of the movie. She doesn't have any face, she's just eyes.
Well, she's the titular eyes.
I don't remember her name.
It's like it's not Christine.
Is it
it's like Christian.
Okay. Edith Scobe, who is also in Judex, the other Georges Franju movie that he made after this one. And probably she worked until she died a couple of years ago, and she worked up until I think her death. And so for modern audiences, she's best known for Holy Motors, which stars Short King himself, Denis Lavant. Was that his name?
It's the French Cosmopolis.
But good. So a couple of facts about this movie. So I first found out about this movie from one of those stupid YouTube movie lists of the top 10 lists. That was
Watch Mojo?
It wasn't Watch Mojo, but it was something like that. And it was old movies that are still shocking and terrifying today. And Freaks was on there. An old silent movie called Haxan was on there that I haven't seen yet. But this movie was on there and was the surgery scenes are still very controversial or very seen as really graphic for the time, which we will get into those a little bit. When this movie came out, it was pretty panned. It was met with mostly negative reviews, and in fact somebody from, I think it was the New York Times, was almost fired for wanting to write a positive review. It was basically because Georges Franju was such a well-established and respected director in, you know, documentary shorts and in, like, fictional features, people saw him directing a genre horror movie as, like, below him. Like, oh, what is he doing in the horror genre? But he wanted to kind of elevate the genre, which, I mean, now, you know, horror still has that, like, genre stigma to it.
Yeah. I mean, just look at, like, the Oscars or stuff like that.
Exactly.
No love for the horror.
No love for the horror. And then another fun fact about it is that it influenced the mask from the Halloween movie, the Michael Myers mask.
De son visage.
That makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, which it makes a lot of sense.
It makes a lot of sense.
Oh, the spoiler alert.
Spoiler alert.
There are going to be spoilers. We figured for the last couple episodes it was fine. You didn't need it. We're going to talk about the movie.
Yeah, we're going to talk about it. So the premise of this movie is that there's this doctor and his daughter was in a horrible car accident, and he tried to salvage her face, but it was just, there was no face.
Yeah.
So him and his secretary, who also got her face reconstructed, have been kidnapping young, beautiful women to try and take their face so he can give his daughter a new face.
Do a little face off. So I just kind of wanted to start with, like, the clear influences it pulls from, which would be, like, a lot of 30s horror, which was kind of interesting because it is more graphic, especially there is a scene where they pretty graphically show, like, the face surgery, the face being taken off, and it's not, like, you can see how they did it, which helps it be less gross.
Yeah.
So it reminded me a lot of this early 30s, like, pre-code Hollywood movie called The Vampire Bat, which is also about, like, a mad scientist who's a vampire, so he's doing vampire stuff. It's different, but he has a similar laid out layer. So it reminded me a lot of that. You know, it's got very Frankenstein-esque vibes.
Definitely.
Pulling from the aesthetics of those early 30s movies, which in turn pull from, like, German Expressionism. It's very much set up in a similar way as well. We're kind of dropped into the story immediately. What's that called?
Not mise en scène. In media res.
In media res.
It sounds similar.
Intellectuals. So we're kind of dropped right into it. The kind of events unfold to us very naturally. This movie's really well constructed in its storytelling.
Mm-hmm. I was like, oh, is this what's happening? Oh, is this what's happening? I was, like, excited in the mystery of it. And I was, like, trying to guess where it's going to take you because, like you say, it opens up and they tell us that the doctor's daughter has died and he goes to see her body. But then, of course, you find out that's not his daughter.
Yeah, so the reveals are done really well. They're not done in a way where it's like, it's not my daughter, or like, we're taking her face, or like, she's my wife. Like, it's all really, like, subtle, but most of it is, like, pretty easy to pick up on. So it, like, is just really beautifully constructed in that way. But so back to, like, the influence from, like, 30s movies. Yeah, you're kind of getting to know the house, getting to know the characters, which is similar to how those 30s movies are constructed. There's a lot of dramatic irony, which those movies also like to play with you knowing who the bad guy is, but the hero doesn't. But the one major difference is this story is told from the villain's perspective, and a little bit from Christian's perspective, whereas those older movies are almost always told from your, like, straightforward hero trying to figure out the mystery from their perspective, besides, like, I mean, Frankenstein is a whole other thing. So it is definitely pulling from that, which again makes it interesting that it was so controversial.
Was it? Because you mentioned that it was infamous. I was like, why is it Yeah.
Well, the full cut with like the surgery scenes wasn't released in the US until 2003.
Damn.
Yeah. Which, like, I mean, I think that this might be a case of just the reputation preceding the film. It's really not that graphic, especially compared to the stuff that came out in like the 70s and 80s.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe also because it's in black and white.
Yeah.
It distances you from the horror a little bit.
If the surgery scenes had been in color, no ma'am.
It's interesting that Psycho came out in the same year. You immediately feel kind of the Psycho vibes in this movie because the first shot is of the assistant driving in the car and glancing behind her. And there's a lot of similar kind of beats where Christiane is presumed dead, so her fiance teams up with the police and kind of they plant a girl so that they can find out what he's doing.
Yeah.
Which is very similar to Psycho and the secret boyfriend and the private investigator. Like, they all go to Bates Motel.
Yeah. And there are other similarities as well. You know, the gothic house, weird familial relationships are another kind of similar, what's the word? Similarity. And then you also have Peeping Tom the same year, the Michael Powell movie from 1960, which was such a critical and commercial disaster and controversial, shocking movie that it like basically halted Michael Powell's career except for Age of Consent, which was like 8 years later. And that movie, you know, it also shares a lot of similarities with both Eyes Without a Face and Psycho, like the perspective being on the villain, something similar with Eyes Without a Face. The kind of gruesomeness of the crimes is similar, although, you know, in Peeping Tom it is like a sexual crime. The obsession with women who all look alike is similar to Eyes Without a Face because all the women they kidnap look similar to how Christiane looked before the accident. So it was just kind of a really interesting year that all three of these movies came out, all like movies that are hugely influential to horror now. Two of them were, you know, not completely, but like on like, you know, there's a kind of a gradient of like how much these movies were accepted at the time, and they all kind of are ushering in kind of what horror would become later.
Another thing I noticed while watching the movie was the kind of parallels in Get Out. This movie feels like a very, not obvious influence, but it would not surprise me if Jordan Peele named this as one of his influences.
Yeah.
So, spoilers for Get Out. If you haven't seen it, I don't know what you're doing.
Go watch it.
Go watch it now. But so the reveal in that movie being that like they are taking the brains of these wealthy white people and putting them into the bodies of black people, and even the way it's presented of this, the surgery scenes are very similar. Of we see Christiane and this kidnapped girl lying next to each other on the table, and then in Get Out is, oh god, what's his character's name?
Chris sounds right, but also I don't remember. Put like a ADR of you saying his name here.
Chris, the blind man, then next to each other, and also kind of also there is an escape of the kidnapped person.
Yeah. And while like obviously Eyes Without a Face is not about like racial commentary, there is a level of like class commentary. They're stealing, you know, pretty disconnected from society, poorer foreign women, and they're, you know, using their faces for a wealthy, you know, highly connected doctor's daughter.
Yeah, and it's kind of this idea of stealing, or like kidnapping girls that they think that people won't miss.
Yeah.
Or won't get found out.
So I thought something else that was cool about this movie was just like the character of Christiane in general. She's the daughter who, she got into a car accident. Her father was driving the car. That's what damaged her face. And she's a really interesting character because she is a victim for the most part. She's a pretty passive character, although she does have like her little rebellions every once in a while, trying to reach toward normalcy and happiness, which would be like she calls up her fiance and she'll just like listen to him say hello. No, it's a little creepy.
Yeah.
But also it was like, oh.
Yeah, it's sad. It's because, like,
He's cute.
It wasn't her choice to pretend that she was dead and be cut off from her entire life.
Yeah. And then her, like, being this victim throughout the story, she then becomes the savior of the story at the very end. She's the one who saves the woman who they have kidnapped, who they have yet to do the surgery on. She's the one who cuts off the strap that's holding her down onto the surgery bed. She kills the secretary, who is also maybe her mom. It's unclear, but it's implied. And she also lets out all the dogs.
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Because there are a bunch of dogs that he does experiments on.
Yeah. They don't go into depth. They just kind of refer to him experimenting on dogs.
Yeah.
And that, like, when things go wrong, he puts them down because it's referenced. Christine is, like, asking to die and is like, I know you have the medicine.
Yeah.
She lets the dogs out and they maul her dad to death.
Yeah.
And then
as attention is drawn to his face in particular, and his face being mauled.
Yeah, and then she just walks off into the woods, vibing
into the distance with doves. And that's the end of the movie. She becomes the savior of the story. She saves the girl. Her killing her father and her maybe mother prevent other deaths of other girls. And then she's is gonna just go, I guess, live in the woods, which, you know, a little Thoreau moment, you know? But I wanted to talk about also beauty in the movie, because I think that this movie has a lot to say about beauty standards, especially for women. And I think that the theme of control that I brought up is really intertwined in the theme of beauty. So when we find out about the car accident that gave her the
no face.
That gave her the no face. Secretary / maybe mom is the one talking to her and is like, I know, like, the car accident happened, and she says, like, accident, he has to control everyone, even on the roads. So this kind of is the first, like, verbal confirmation that the doctor is obsessed with control. But it's pretty clear from before then that he is obsessed with controlling Christiane in particular. You know, she forces her to stay in the house. He forces her to wear a very creepy mask over her face. He forces her to go through these surgeries to get a new face.
These surgeries are not really for her benefit. No. She, like, talks about, like, wanting to die and not wanting to, like, go through these surgeries. Again, it's very much her father imposing what he thinks she should want and what he wants her to look like.
Yeah.
And, like, even when she's in their house, he forced her to wear masks when there's no one else to see them.
Yeah.
Because he doesn't want to look at her.
So when this comes to the theme of beauty and how control affects that, you know, he has, like, the tightest control over her own self-perception and with what he wants the world to see of his daughter. Christiane, before the accident, was extremely beautiful, very conventionally attractive. And so this is something that she, of course, loses with the accident. And because of like the societal pressure for women to be very beautiful and to get their self-worth from the way that they look, from the way they present themselves in their own like natural beauty, this becomes like a bit of a commentary on how connected a woman's worth is to her looks. At no point is there any thought from the father of just hoping and trying to get Christiane to see that she still has worth as a person. She seems to be a very kind-hearted person, a very like gentle soul, someone who cares about animals. You know, she has plenty of great qualities, and he is so obsessed with the fact that her face is now, you know, ruined. When, you know, she's still alive, she's still like has her personality.
Yeah, and it's also interesting because it kind of becomes, I think the surgery becomes something that the doctor has to prove to himself that he can do. It's not so much like, oh, I'm gonna help my daughter. It's like, oh, I'm gonna be the best at this and look at what I can accomplish. Yeah. It's very self-centered.
And I really liked that the ending wasn't her killing herself.
No.
I was worried that's where it was gonna go, which, you know, is a very, very common trope for characters who have like disfigurements or disabilities, is that they, you know, kill themselves or want to kill themselves.
Yeah, and it also becomes kind of this idea that like her life wasn't bad because she was in an accident and like disfigured. It was because of the way her dad saw her and treated her.
Yeah.
And once she eliminated like that outside pressure, like she could just do what she wants, and she seems happy.
You know, a bit of an open-ended but very optimistic ending for her. That she is going to be able to make peace with the fact that, like, you know, she has worth beyond a formerly beautiful face.
Well, watching this movie, the mask is very creepy.
It's really spooky.
Yeah, it like goes over her face, and like it has a nose and it has lips and the eyes are cut out, and it's like, we assume white, it's just one color, and it's spooky.
It's really spooky.
It reminded me of these portraits, like these self-portraits that, I don't know her name, does, where she will put on like prosthetics and makeup to become other people. She did a great series of family portraits. But the thing is, like, when you look at it for just a second, it looks like a real person. And then you look closer around the eyes, and it becomes horrifying, like she took the skin off of someone else. Mm-hmm. So yeah, I thought that was
a nice parallel.
Yeah. We didn't mention the clown music.
Yeah, so the directing is very subtle, very gentle, really nice. But there is clown music.
Yeah.
Edna, elle s'est échappée.
It's like a theme for the secretary, it feels like, and it very much just sounds like do 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 do.
Yeah, it's like whenever she's on the prowl for a new like girl to kidnap, the music plays. And it like doesn't take away from the movie or anything, but it is like an interesting choice that they decided like a little clown music for.
Yeah, especially because I don't even necessarily remember the music for the rest of the movie, or if what the score was like at all, except for that.
Yeah.
So it was just it really stood out. So Zoe, what would you rate this movie?
I've been thinking about it, and I'm somewhere between like a 3.5 and a 4.
Yeah, I was gonna say it's a 3.5, where it's like, I was into it. I liked the mystery and the story, but it wasn't like the most.
Yeah. I think its reputation also definitely precedes itself. I know you didn't even really have that influence at all, but for me, like, you know, especially with something like Freaks, like if you hear that's a movie that's still kind of spooky, and like the end of that movie's fucked.
It's fucked up. I remember screaming and be like, yo, what the fuck?
Yeah. So like compared to that, where it's like, oh yeah, this is a little freaky, it really is not, you know, anything that is going to be super disturbing to a modern day audience.
And also, we talked about this while we were watching the movie, it's like, they can do face transplants now.
Yeah.
So it's like, I mean, we are not the 1960s audience.
Yeah.
That idea isn't as horrifying to me. It's more just like kidnapping and the forced aspect that's horrifying.
Yeah.
So would you recommend this movie?
I would. As I said before, like, you know, its reputation might, you know, give someone a false expectation. So just know going in, like, it's not gonna be anything, like, super gory or shocking. But it is, like, a really nicely made, like, horror thriller. Like, it's really beautifully made.
Yeah, the pacing was really nice. We checked the time, like, 40 minutes in, and we were like, oh, we're already 40 minutes in. It, like, moved right along.
Yeah.
And also, it's a tight 90 minutes.
Yeah, it's like exactly 90 minutes,
Yeah.
I think, which is...
Yeah, I'd recommend this movie. I definitely like those, I just like when movies are good at building suspense.
So that was Eyes Without a Face. So Bellamy is choosing the next movie.
Yeah, so on our next episode, we're gonna be watching the 2002 movie The Scorpion King, starring Dwayne "The Rock" Johnson, which is a spin-off of The Mummy Returns, which he was in for like under 10 minutes.
Great. Bellamy is a The Mummy super fan.
Yes, the first one, great. The second one, great. The third one, I pretend it does not exist.
The original,
The Tom Cruise remake,
Russell Crowe.
bad. The Scorpion King,
We'll see.
to be determined. Thank you for watching, and this has been What Did We Just Watch?
Who let the dogs out? Who let the dogs out?
Dog revenge.
We'll get to it. We live in this society.
We do live in a society.
I'm worried I'm going to be sexually attracted to the Scorpion King. Do you have your notes?
What about cats?
We already saw cats and it was great. God, we are
Well, we're so... I
intellectuals.
was gonna say that.